While I think the study of Africa is absolutely essential to African Americans as a people
Yeah.
to get a handle on who we are, I don't think we focus enough on Mama and Papa.
Okay.
I spent the first 10 years of my life living with my grandmama and my granddad,
Yeah.
and then all my aunts and uncles. The younger ones were more like big. And the people in the flour sack dresses
Yeah.
and the Bill Bubble rolls
Yeah.
brought us a long way.
Right.
And while much about them has been denigrated, I believe wrongfully so. I grew up, I started life in an all-black town in Oklahoma. And the last time I was there was in 2010, because a part of my family that I didn't know very well was having their family reunion. So a cousin and I, who's from my branch, we went. And we got there. We went to church that Sunday. When I came out of the pulpit at the end of service, a lady walked up to me, Mother Nears, 92 years old. And she said, "Son, what's your name? I believe I know you." I said, "Oh, no, ma'am, you couldn't know me. I left here at 7 years old." And that was 2010. I was, I don't know, whatever I was in 2010. But it had been a long time. She said, "Oh, what's your name?" I said, "Arnold." She said, "No, it's not." Now I know my name, but I'm not going to argue with a 92-year-old church mother either in her church. And she said, "What's your name?" I said, "Arnold." She said, "No, it's not. Your name is Butch." Now, if you call me Butch, you're either a relative on my maternal side or you're from that town. Because when I got to LA, I wasn't Butch anymore. And anyway, I said, I never got to ask my granddad, but why did your dad and my granddad, and she was a friend of my mother's, they grew up together, why did those men and women back then, why did they want their own town? Because, and up until then, I had always thought those all-black towns, because there were 28 in Oklahoma one time, I had thought they were because white people didn't want them around. I didn't know they were intentional. And the first time I realized that, she said, in what I consider the most wonderful bit of understatement that I have ever heard, she said, "Well, you see, baby, they just believed that if they lived with the rest of them, meaning white folks," she shook her head and said, "it just wasn't going to work out." And it hasn't for us. Integration, when it comes, the worst thing, when it comes to education and economics, integration is the worst thing that ever happened to us. Because, I come out of the segregated era. So, for example, I was telling some young people the other day, you've never been on the street like I have, like Central Avenue and Avalon Boulevard in LA, back in when I was a boy in the 50s. So you've never been on the street where it's 50 or 60 black-owned businesses. When I was a boy, I was telling you, I was saying I loved baseball when I was growing up. I still have an unnatural relationship with baseball. And when we were on our way to a game, if we were running late, there were two stores where we could buy candy, bubble gum, toys. One was owned by Mr. Morris, who was a Jewish man, and another was owned by Mr. Johnson, who was a black man. Well, when we was in a hurry, we went to the Jewish man's store. Because we go to Mr. Johnson's store, he gonna want to know what you're taking in school, what your grades was like, how your mama doing, what's your daddy up to, when the last time he been fishing. Because he cared about us. He cared about what happened to us. I tell my son, you tell my son and daughter all the time, y'all got it lucky. When I was growing up, every adult in my neighborhood was a damn snitch. They would tell on you. First of all, they would check you if they saw you doing wrong. By the time you got home, your mama and daddy already knew, because they got on the phone. And sometimes you didn't know they saw you. So you walk in the house and think everything is cool and all hell fitting to break loose up in there on you. I mean, how glorious no idea to know that when we left our home and walking down the street, like especially in the summer, because we didn't have babysitters in those days. After about 8 years old, we was on our own. And we didn't know that we were being watched everywhere we went. That's the tribalism that was brought from Africa to the South, to LA and New York and everywhere else until they tore apart our communities. And this wretched behavior that we have in our communities can be directly tied. Let me show you. I grew up on the street like many of us did, but some of y'all that grew up in San Francisco did. I grew up on the street with single family homes. And there might be 40, 50 homes on the block.
And where'd you grow up?
LA, South Central. Maybe 40, 50 homes on the block. 3, 4 people in each one. Sometime one person, sometime 6 or 7, but it balanced. Well, you can know that many people. And they all know you. So then urban renewal and all this other stuff comes, and they tear down single family homes. And they build a complex with 200 units. 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. So now, that complex, that 200 unit building, now instead of them 30, 40 homes that it took out, now you got 300 people living there. And then they tear down and build 150 units on the other side of the street. Now you got 500 people on your block. You can't possibly know that many people. And people are leery of strangers, no matter what color they are. So what you do is you don't foster community. And so this is what leads to this kind of behavior. When I was a boy in LA growing up, we knew the police was dangerous and all that. But y'all know who we were scared of? I was scared of my friends' daddies. The men in our neighborhood. Because you didn't want to, we're standing on the block talking, and all of a sudden, it's getting in the evening, it's 7 o'clock in the summer, and we're out there making noise. And all of a sudden, you hear a window go up, and a disembodied man's voice says, "All right, y'all carry that on away from my house now." "Yes, sir, Mr. So-and-so," and you're gone. And we lost community. And so when we build these complexes, we don't build in community, which should be just as important as the home we construct, if not more so. Because a community can make a bad house work better than good community can make a good house work. You can have the greatest house in the world, but if you don't live in the community, you're empty and you're without much. But anyway, y'all need to start. So, because as you can see, I can go on.
This is great, though. So, I love this.
But I mean, it's absolutely.
And you already answered one of our first questions. Where did you grow up? And it's
I grew up in South Central LA. I started in Watts, living with my grandparents, and then by the time I got to be about roughly 10 years old or so, there was a big argument with my grandmother and my mother, because I was my grandmother's favorite. And she wanted me to live with her. And my mama wanted me to come live with her. And my mama saying, "But mama," because that's what we call our grandmother, mama. My mom was mom, but my grandmother was mama. She said, "But mama, he's my son and he never lived with me." And she, my grandma, "Well, baby, I'm kind of old now. And he's a big help to me. I need him to help me around out here." She dropped the old card on her. But anyway, my mom won. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is amazing, and it's why if you have children, talk to them. If you ain't got children yet, when you get them, talk to them. My mother died in a car accident at 47. I heard this discussion at home with my grandmama. And my mama and her are on the phone talking. And I'm basically hearing one side of the conversation. Now, from the time I was 10 or so when I heard that conversation till I was 47, I thought I heard them arguing because neither one of them wanted me. And my mama saying, "No, mama, let him stay with you." And my grandmother saying, "No, he need to." And I believed that because I'm the only child, see. So I didn't have nobody to bounce on. And I preached my mother's funeral, and we went to the repast at the church, and then afterwards we all went to my aunt's house who was only 5 years older than me, so she and I grew up together very close. We went to her house to play bid whist and the thing that black folk do after funerals. And I'm sitting there telling some of my younger cousins the story of how my mama and grandmother had an argument because neither one of them wanted me. And my aunt was walking by, and she stops and overhears me, and she says, "Fool, that ain't what happened." And then, and as soon as she explained it, I remembered it correctly, almost verbatim. But for 37 years, I had lived within my mind somehow that neither my grandmother or my mother wanted me. Because we don't talk. That's why sometimes we realize now, even in our church, we're not a church who believes that the Lord will fix it. No, the Lord will send you in directions where you can get it fixed. In other words, if your car breaks down, you can pray all you want, but unless you get your car to a mechanic. Well, even the same with us as humans. And I'm assistant pastor, and my senior pastor said, "Look, I can help y'all with some things because I'm trained for that. Some of y'all need professional help that's beyond my clue." But it really is. So I grew up very strangely being an only child, which I don't recommend anybody ever having just one kid, because when you're an only child, it's not a family to you. It was me against them all my life, you know. And so I don't do that. But anyway, so that's where I grew up. I can say this, growing up in LA, my family and I, the first house my parents ever bought, we integrated the neighborhood. But we moved in, we were the first black family on the block.
Where was it at? What was
South Central,
Okay.
56th Street between Normandy and Dinker. But yet, we moved in, but within 6 months, it was about 3 or 4 more black families moved in. And then our neighborhood, black, white, Lloyd Nakano lived there, he was Asian. Eddie Valencia was down on the next corner, Latino. Johnny Rolanza, Filipino, was next door to me. But we stayed in contact. The neighborhood stayed together for about 9 years, 6 to 9 years, before anybody moved. And we grew up there, and I thought it was the most wonderful, I still do. It was an absolute wonderful way to grow up. People ask me, what was it like growing up in LA in the 50s? And I say, have you ever watched Leave It to Beaver? And they say, you're kidding. I said, no, except the biggest difference was most of our parents' moms worked. Except there were 2 or 3 moms on the block that didn't work. And during the summer, they were the block moms. Because like I said, we didn't have babysitters. So we just ran the streets. It's wonderful. Just ran the street on our own. But because it was LA, you had to have a bicycle or you get left out. So when your bike broke, you immediately that night got it fixed because LA too spread out. But we did the same things. And the other difference was our gang was integrated pretty much. But other than that, we did pretty much what they did on Beaver Cleaver, visiting the firehouse and getting to know the guys at the local garage and hanging out, just getting our bikes and deciding the night before we're going to pack lunches and ride to the beach, 15 miles, or we're going to ride to Griffith Park. Those were that was the way we grew up, and it was just amazing. I used to say when my daughter was first born, Rachel, my 38, she was 38 and unexpectedly passed away in 2018. But Rachel, I used to tell people when she was born that if there was a place I could take her where she could grow up like I did, I would move anywhere in the world to give that to her. Unfortunately, that place does not exist. Because I tell people I grew up, I believe, in the 50s, in the era when the country almost made it. We almost made it. That neighborhood stayed intact. Black, white, all of us, we're growing up together. We're growing up together. We really know each other. Our families know each other. I'll never forget, I was 10 years old when we first moved in. And my friend Bernie, she's a redhead Irish girl, freckled. Her family is having a barbecue in the backyard. I'm invited, people on the block. And I'm walking up, and her dad and her two uncles, his brothers, are sitting on the steps drinking beer. He's a big truck driver looking at Irish dudes. And the joke was, hey, Bernie, here comes your boyfriend. You know, and we all stayed there together. But then the real estate blockbusters, and this is where propaganda is so dangerous, because these people had experienced us. People on the block, my dad, mom, knew all the people on, we all knew each other. And the real estate blockbusters started coming in and telling the white folks, they're coming. And they started moving. They're coming. We were already there. And nothing had happened. Nothing had changed. But they believed the propaganda. Because you know, America's first propaganda was racism. Because what they had to do, not long after Jamestown, was convince everybody, the world, and even themselves, and even some of us, that black people were only worthy of being slaves. They had to create that propaganda to make their version of this country work. So they wouldn't have to work. So, you know, but yeah, propaganda was so dangerous. They started telling them that, and then the neighborhood started to change. And then some years later, we needed a bigger house. I don't know why, because the family hadn't grown, but my folks wanted a bigger house. I think what it was, we had a 2-bedroom home and a living room. And when we got the new house, we had 3-bedroom home, so one of the bedrooms became the den.
Where'd you move to?
We moved to Leimert Park.
Oh, Moore Park. Okay.
Which is Leimert Park, which is Crenshaw area.
Okay.
So it wasn't that far,
Yeah.
but it was a little far.
And then, so let's transition. How did you think about San Francisco State? Like, where did that start to enter your life?
Well, it hadn't been in my life at all. I hope, I'm going to be real honest in this interview. I hope y'all have the good sense to edit. But I just want to be honest, because it's really a funny story, but people may not understand. So I left LA to go to junior college just outside LA, 30, 40 miles, Mount San Antonio. And I went there because it was a baseball school. And college only meant baseball to me, because that's what I wanted to do, that's what I thought I would do. So I went there. And the reason I went there is they were like a farm team for USC, because my ambition was to go there for a year or two and then transfer to USC and then sign a pro contract. Well, I got out there to Mount Sac. I had some issues with the coach, primarily sent around. I was a pitcher. Anyway, I dropped out after a couple of years of Mount Sac. And I was talking with the White Sox and the Phillies. But Vietnam had just jumped. Was just kind of jumping off 1965. So I got drafted in the Army. So I get to Fort Carson, Colorado, and I meet a guy, Roger Caron, who's another striker who I'm looking for, so maybe. Anyway, Roger and I became friends. And Roger, when we were in the Army, one of the things we talked about was we had a real thirst for literature. Real literature. We could buy them books where everybody killed each other in the PX, but real literature was hard to come by when we were in the Army. So my mother would send me books and stuff. She would send me books, and she would send me Peanuts comics books because I identified with Charlie Brown. And anyway, Roger got out of the Army early. We were able to get him out after only about 8 or 9 months. And when I met him, he was a grad student at State. He was from Richmond, moved to San Francisco to attend State College. He went to Cal, graduated Cal, then became a grad student in anthropology. And because he remembered the dearth of literature, he would send me stuff to read. Well, at the time, San Francisco State had a literary magazine called Open Process. And he would send me copies of Open Process. Now, y'all got to you guys are kind of young, so it might be difficult for you to put this in context. But this is 1966. Larry Flint, Hugh Hefner, and them people are going in and out of jail for what they're publishing. Okay? So he sends me a copy of Open Process. And on Open Process, one of the copies he sends me, because I'm already thinking about where I want to go to school when I get out of the Army, where I want to finish school and maybe even give baseball one more shot. Although I'm getting kind of old now, I'm 23. And so he sends one copy of Open Process, had a full frontal nude of a woman. And I decided right then, this is probably where I want to go to school. This looks like the kind of place that I would like. So that's how I got introduced to San Francisco State, believe it or not. It had nothing to do with ethnic study, because you got to remember, black BSU wasn't even a thing that I knew about in '66. I knew about black, I knew about the struggle and what we were going through, but I did not, this stuff was just crystallizing. So when I got out of the Army, I came home in '67, and I got released in Fort Lewis, Washington. I get on a plane, I get in town. The next day, I'm a free man. I fly to San Francisco. I let Roger know I'm coming. We're going to spend a few hours, and then I'm going to head on home to see my folks. Now, you got to remember, this is September 2nd, 1967. Y'all remember what 1967 was? No, you don't, because you're too young. That was the summer of love.
Yes.
And I hit town. I ain't gonna tell you much more because most of it I can't. But I hit town, I go to Roger's house. Well, that few hours turned into 30 days.
Wow.
I was here 30 days before my folks knew I was back in the country. What was going on in San Francisco in '67 was like nothing I had ever seen. No one had.
Can you describe what that was? What was going on?
Well, only a little bit of it can I describe for what I consider will be a family-friendly documentary. but I can tell you about that. It was really open and free. There were you could walk down the street and get in conversations and that people were having about not only where the country was headed, but how people ought to live their lives. We were talking about stuff that we thought, and I still think, was really important. People were challenging racism and racist concepts that were considered normal, the norm of how we should live. And people were challenging that. They were even challenging family structure and societal structure. Things that, resonated with me. I remember when I was out here at State College, and I bought a book of women's poetry. I only remember one poem that was in the book, but it just resonated with me so much because my daddy was different. And the one poem I remember from the book was, it said, when he got sick, I took care of him. When I got sick, he got sick too. That, it may not sound like much, but that was like revolutionary with me. Because one, it spoke to the kind of man I didn't want to be. And that wasn't the kind of man my daddy was. I just, I appreciate him and my mom's relationship so much now, because my mom was what y'all would call a career woman before the term was ever popular. I remember walking home one day, and in the driveway, there's a brand new 1955 Ford in 1955, and that was the hottest car out there. And we got us a new car. I said, oh, we got a new car. My daddy's, yeah, me and your mama. In other words, you ain't putting no money in this car. You know, you can't claim. But anyway, and so we ate dinner that night, and me and my dad are sitting at the table talking. Mom get up from the table. She go in the bedroom. She come back. She got a coat on, and she takes the car keys and throw them in front of my dad and say, here, throw them on the table, and threw them on the table. He said, where are we going? She said, you're going to teach me how to drive. And he said, you going to learn how to drive? She said, you don't think I'm going to pay for a car that I can't drive? My name on them papers too. Now, those are the people that raised me.
Wow.
So if I'm a little strange, I'll just tell you something else about my daddy. My mom's gone now, and I go up to Vancouver, Washington to visit at the beginning of, I guess it was, what was the first one? Was that Desert Storm? With Bush Sr., Saddam Hussein? And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what do you think about Saddam Hussein? He said, well, I don't know much about the fella, but I figure anybody got that many white people mad at him can't be all bad. So if you think I'm a little strange, those are the people that raised me, so blame them.
Wow.
But yeah, that's
So you're 30 days of Summer of Love here in San Francisco. What happens next?
So I'm here 30 days, so finally I go home.
Okay.
And I go home, and I'm in LA, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But I'm really already thinking that I want to go to school at State. And after spending those 30 days and meeting people from State College, and met some black folk who were going to State College, you know, I'm pretty much sold. But I'm still, you know, LA's home, and I'm hanging out with my folks who I've been away from, because during those 2 years, I only came home one weekend in those whole 2 years. I've been gone. I didn't get a leave before I went to Korea, none of that. So, but I was just glad I wasn't going to Vietnam. And so I'm kind of commuting. I sign up for unemployment. I get my check every Thursday. So what I do is I get my check on Thursday, and I party all weekend. And on Sunday night, I would take the hippie special back to, see, a flight, at that time, a flight to LA was $12.
Oh.
But if you took the hippie special, which was like around midnight on, because that was when they used to fly every hour on the hour to LA. Well, if you took the hippie special at midnight, you was only $10. And they'd be smoking weed on the plane, because you smoke on the plane then, and playing guitars and you know what. So I would take that back to San Francisco, and I'd be in San Francisco from Monday through Thursday.
Wow.
And then Thursday, I would fly down Thursday morning and go straight to the employment office to get my check, because that's when you pick your check up at the employment office. And then in LA, is good party town. So I give it all my friends I grew up with, and we party on the weekend, and then I come back. And so that was it for about 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, I had met a young lady here, and we kind of hit it off. And I just came up and moved here into San Francisco. Then we got a bigger apartment, and up at the top of Castro Hill. And it was my existence. And so I got a job working graveyard at the post office. This leads to State College. Got a job working graveyard at the post office out the airmail facility. So my ride, I would live in the top of Castro, but I wouldn't let them pick me up at home. I would catch the bus down Divisadero to Divisadero and Oak. There was, you know, that gas station, that Shell station used to be there. But on the other side of the street where there's a paint store, and next to the paint store, there's a place there, I think it may be a pet shop or something, but anyway, that was the Both And Jazz Club, which was a nationally known jazz club. And I'm talking about Train, Lee Morgan, everybody played there. Miles, when they came to town, that's where they played at the Both And. Delano Dean and Lenny, can't remember Lenny's last name right now. They owned it. And so I would stand in front of the both end and smoke a joint and listen to jazz. And I get there about 45 minutes before my ride would get there. So I get to hear some music. Sometimes I go inside. When I'm standing out smoking a joint, and one night, and these two dudes walk up. And two brothers walk up. One of them I had seen before. We were playing basketball in the Panhandle, and he had on Army fatigues, but because I just got out the Army, I could tell they were the real thing. They wasn't something you bought at Banana Republic. And so we started talking. So they saw me, and they asked me if I had another joint. I gave them both a joint because I was selling weed too, and I'm trying to make customers. So that became kind of like a little ritual. They'd walk up, and I'd stand there, and we'd smoke a joint together before they go in and before I go to work. And one night, they told me, now look, man, I was off on Saturdays and Sundays. They said, look, man, we're going to pick you up tomorrow. And we're going to go up on Fillmore Street and hit some of the clubs. Well, they picked me up and took me up on Fillmore Street. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was, Cadillacs double parked up and down the street, people walking in and out of the various clubs. It's about 7 or 8 clubs. Where Hanks 500 was on the corner of 8. And then there's the Booker T, which had a hotel, which had a club inside of there. They had live music. I'm trying to remember all the Birdcage. I'm old. Minnie's Can Do Club, the University Hideaway, which was a jazz club, right, connected to a Japanese restaurant. You could go from one to the other. The Scene was the northernmost club on Fillmore. It was on Clay. And that was Fillmore. I know it's Lower Pacific Heights now, but that was the Fillmore back then. And then Nate Thurman had his restaurant. The Beginning was on Pine and Fillmore. The Texas Playhouse, the Flamingo Room, Jack's of Sutter. It's some more. Then you had After Hours, Jimbo's Bob City. The Fillmore was live. It was just live. And then you go on to visit Earl Street, and you had the Sportsman, the Playpen, the Half Note, and the Morocco. I can't remember all of them now, but it was just, Fillmore was just something to behold. They called it the Harlem of the West, and it really was. And you've got to understand something, don't you? They were clubs, but as a companion to them, there were also other companion businesses that were black owned. Besides beauty salons, barbershop, shoe shine parlors, restaurants. All this was black owned. Cleaners. You get your clothes cleaned. And what you've got to remember is these places represented wealth. We had fun in them and all. They represented wealth. They represented jobs. All of these places hired people. All these black entrepreneurs hired people to work in these places. And so what happened is, through urban renewal and redline and all that stuff, they took our wealth and gave us money for it. And you also got to understand that these were the people who kept the strike going. They not only came out and walked picket line. Community icons to us, people like Mary Helen Rogers. They walked the picket line. They also fed us. In their homes. They fed us. They took care of us. They protected us. When the strike was over, I don't know about anybody else, but the black kids out here, we couldn't get jobs. We were pariahs. If were it not for black businesses and black organizations, the people like Dr. Carlton Goodman that took care of us. The black churches that supported us and took care of us. Put a little put a little money in our pocket so we could eat and survive. Because I don't know, none of my friends that I can remember after the strike had jobs working for black people, had jobs working for white people and white organizations and things. No, we couldn't get no job. When the late Terry Collins did his Freedom of Information Act, it wasn't till then that we found out that we knew the FBI and all them people was around, but we found out we were surveilled by the intelligence divisions of all the armed forces, as the Army and Navy.
Wow.
And we were kids. And we, in a way, knew we weren't ready necessarily yet for armed overthrow, although that was something we dreamed about and fantasized about, of changing the direction of the country. But I think what we didn't understand, that J. Edgar Hoover and others understood, was Arab Spring. That sometimes dissidents can become so great that it will require a change in government. I remember being at a demonstration that the Third World Liberation Front supported, along with the Panthers and every other radical organization, a Free Huey demonstration at the Federal Building, to where the people at one point joined hands, and the Federal Building on Golden Gate is a whole block, and we joined hands and surrounded that block 2 or 3 rows deep. You know how many people it takes to do that? That it was so strong. A protest was so strong that it was growing, and we were seriously talking about a general strike in this country. And one of the things that I would say that I would, if I was going to say that I find lacking in today's movement of younger people, is education, political education, or people in the community who may not even be on your side now. Because I watched truckers and Teamsters who came out and attacked the first anti-war demonstrators. I watched them go from attacking demonstrators to marching in the demonstration by the time the Vietnam War ended. That was because of political education that we took on, and because that's what we were doing. When the general press reported on what we were doing, they had to report on what we were talking about. You see?
Yeah.
And so and I find that lacking today. Instead of doing like the Republicans do and choosing sides, get busy and educate the people who should be your natural allies. And that ain't happening now. That ain't happening now. We've got to go back to some things that, use things that worked. And so anyway, I was a baseball player and I was a pitcher. And if I was pitching against somebody who couldn't hit a curveball, I wasn't going to throw in no fastball the next time. So if you see things that have worked, use them. And again and again and again. And that's something that y'all call it the progressive movement has really got to start getting busy with. Start talking to people who don't look like progressives. Because y'all got it in your mind what a progressive looks like. No, I'm amazed when people tell me nowadays that I'm not progressive. So I remember when you used to be young and progressive. I said, no, when you used to be progressive. No, I was young then. Now I'm old progressive. If I try as an old progressive to do what young progressive did, I would look like a fool. I have to provide something else now. Because when I was in the Army and they were teaching military tactics, when they talked about we're going to charge the enemy, they never said, well, when we get ready to charge, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all the old men up front. That ain't going to work. It's not going to be we move too slow, we're going to get everybody killed. But there is a place. But we live in the Western world, and Western thought says that when the new comes, the old is thrown away. The Eastern world, when you get to Asia and Africa and all those places, they said no. When the new comes, they join hands and move forward together stronger. Moses would have never gotten to the promised land without Joshua's strength. Joshua was in charge on it. But Joshua, with his strength, would have never gotten there without Moses' wisdom. So that's why it takes all of us. And if we don't adopt some of those things and learn from our brothers and sisters of Eastern thought, we're going to always be starting over.
So Reverend Townsend, thank you. This is also amazing. Can you tell us when you made contact at San Francisco State with the strike and the Black Student Union? And who were the first folks you met?
I started it, but I didn't finish. So these guys that would come and get a joint from me every night in front of both ends were students at San Francisco State. That's what I meant to say. They were students. George Colbert and Wade Speedy Woods, both members of the Central Committee. And George was so important because he was in charge of the bail fund. He raised and handled the money for the bail fund. See, one of the things you didn't worry about going to jail because you knew the brothers and sisters was coming to get you out. They're not only going to bail you out, when you walked out, somebody was going to be there to give you a ride home. So we became friends. They took me up on Fillmore Street that night, and they knew, and I told them I wanted to go to state. So I came out, and so right around that time, the strike jumped off. And I was working nights at the post office, was out spending my day, even before I was a student, on the picket line. And I'm at home one day, I just got off work, getting ready to go to take a nap, because I got to sleep in the daytime because I'm working graveyard shift. I'm going to get it right. Cherry Collins, Clarence Thomas, Buzz Thomas, Don Smothers, who now lives in, they're all members of the Central Committee, who now lives out in Philadelphia. I hung out with him last time I was in Philly. And somebody else. Might have been Cole. But they came and knocked on my door and said, get dressed, man. We taking you out to State College. You enrolling. So they bring me out to State College. We get out here. And I'm getting ready to go. I see the people lined up to sign up for school. I go to get in line. And where you going? So ain't that the line? Well, come on, man. So they take me to the administration building. They take me into a door that I know I ain't got no business going in. You know how you're on campus, you all see them doors. You never see anybody go in and out of those doors. And if they are, they ain't nobody you know. So they took me through one of them doors. We went through some back hallways. I come in. I go in to see Reggie Major or the Upward Bound Project or whatever it was called. No, it wasn't called that. It was called EOP or something like that.
EOP.
Yeah. So he's over that program. They give me some papers to fill out outside. They take me to Ron Brown, who is over the money. He can get you your money. And so I go see him, I fill out some more forms, I go somewhere, I get the forms signed, dated, stamped. Next thing I know, I'm in school. In one day, I am in school. I got some checks for several grand. My student loan and grants and all that stuff. I'm in good shape. We go to the bank. When I was out here and they and signed me up for all of that, it cost me, and this is really as important as anything I'm going to tell you, it cost me $78
Wow.
to sign up for my first year at San Francisco State College. You know why it cost me $78? Because the Constitution promised me a free education. And $6,000 and $8,000 and $15,000 is not a free education. That's what y'all paying now.
7,000.
$7,000, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
That's not a free education. When I went to junior college, it cost me $8. Now it would have cost me $32, and I could have got tickets to all the sporting events. But since I was in the athletic department playing ball, those was free. So it cost me $8. That's what education should be, because we're promised a free education. So, in fact, the next year they raised the $87, and we raised hell, because they went up $9. So, whatever y'all think we made out of money or something, you know. But this is, but that's as important as anything that we're going to discuss. That you could go, and I'll tell you another thing that I'm gonna say this because I might forget later. Coming out of strike, you know, we end up now with ethnic studies. So, you know, I don't know what they call it. I don't want to get LGBTQ studies, women's studies. All that is important. But you know what's equally important we don't talk about? For a couple of years after the strike, we had open admissions. It didn't matter where you went to school, what your grades was, and none of that. You wanted to go to school, you had a right to because you paid for it. One of the guys I know who got into school, one of the black students that got into school on open admissions, ended up graduating and getting his master's and he's retired now, but they still call him out of retirement because he's so needed. He became one of the baddest child psychologists in San Francisco. Black, and had lived a life that, you know, had lived a life, had been in the life with people working for him, females, if y'all know what I mean. Gave that up because he got into black politics. Then went to school, became a child psychologist, and saved the lives of so many children in San Francisco. You could number them on your hands, fingers, and toes of all the people in your family who never would have had the opportunity were it not for the strike and open admissions.
What was his name?
Gene Mabry, Bruh Mabry.
Okay.
Call him Bruh Mabry from Bayview, Huntersville. Brilliant man. And I count him as a dear friend. But these are the kinds of things. It wasn't for just some intellectual pursuits that we wanted this college open. It was to save people's lives. It was so we could pour into people's everyday lives. One of the things that didn't happen, that should have happened and still should happen, we had it set up that nobody could get a degree in black studies unless you had put in a certain amount of hours working in the community for black organizations, black churches. I think that still ought to be a part of the criteria. I think it was a mistake to dismiss it, but when the BSU folk was no longer, you know, they fought us being a part of this school, for being a part of ethnic studies for many years. And then that was kind of dropped. Because see, what we were thinking, that we could get talented folk who were going to end up in great places as kind of employees for these black nonprofit organizations, for our black churches. We could get that talent for a few years at least until they got out of school and started commanding a salary that we couldn't pay them. And we figured that, you know, the Asian studies and La Raza studies and all them would follow suit and do the same thing. And we would be pouring this cadre, these battalions, these legions of brains into our communities, pouring into our children and our seniors and our single mothers and single fathers, that we would have this talent. The one thing we didn't want to happen is for ethnic studies to become part of the ivory tower experience. Because were it not for those people that we wanted to help, it wouldn't be no ethnic study. It was folk who went to jail out here that never walked on a college campus a day in their life. Eloise Westbrook, Bertha Cohen, Mary Helen Rogers, Cleo Wallace, then others, Charles Turner, Dr. Carlton Goodley. They came out here, Ron Dellums. They came out here and got arrested. Put hold on their lives for y'all. You get what I'm saying? Cecil Williams, Jan Mirkatani, his wife. They went to jail. And I went to jail 3 times out here. I never went to jail until I got to college. As long as I was on the street, I was pretty good at avoiding jail. But out here, I got lazy. This is what the ethnic studies was created for. Not just so you could get off in some books and get some good grades. That had absolutely nothing to do with what we were doing. What we were doing was to improve, build up, rescue, and save our communities. And this institution was going to do it. And then our dream that every institution around would follow, which they did. There wasn't no black studies and ethnic studies till we got it out here. But because we didn't keep the community-based component with it, because see, the ivory tower experience didn't see value in our communities. And I think sometimes we got a little too focused on trying to prove our academic worthiness to white people who told black students, after they had promised an a black studies department, told them later when they came back to school after the summer that there really wasn't nothing academically worthy about the black experience, so we ain't gonna do it. So why are we trying to prove our academic worthiness to them? Damn academic worthiness. If the community could see your worthiness, that's what we should have been concerned about. That the people in Fillmore, in the Mission, Ingleside, that even the people in the Sunset and Richmond, if they could see our academic worthiness, the hell with what the ivory tower intelligentsia thought. The hell with what they thought. We were never out to impress them. All they knew, we were the ones who disrupted their classes. You know, I was, my first year out of high school, I went to LA City College summer. I took only one course, a philosophy course. That was kind of the guy I was. I was always into that and kind of thinking. And there was a young lady in this class, maybe a year or two older than me, Japanese from UCLA. She took that class. And she stood up one day after we'd been in class about 3-4 weeks, and she tore the textbook that the instructor had given us apart. And for me, it was an epiphany. I was 18 and didn't know you could argue with a book. I thought if it was in a book somewhere, it had to be so. And she tore the racism. One of the authors was Alfred North Whitehead, and I can't remember who the others were. But I mean, my whole world changed. I didn't know. I started reading differently from that day forward. I'm just out of high school. What am I saying? You know, this is what we were trying to do.
Reverend Townsend, can you talk about the role? What roles you played during the strike, or what were you doing? What do you feel like you were?
I would say that if you talk to my friends like Bernard Springer and the late George Colbert and the late Speedy Wood, I think they would tell you I was a soldier. I wasn't a leader. I wasn't a member of the Central Committee. I was just out here every day. I wasn't an idiot, so I used my brain to do what we. But I think what happened is because of my activeness. I've never called myself an activist. I think things like activist, revolutionary, you know, I think those are the things that other people call you. And it's an honor and a compliment. But I don't call myself that. That's a little presumptive for me. But yeah, so my role, I was here every day during the strike, fighting the police, sometimes physically. There are incidents that I could tell you, but I won't. Even though the statute of limitations have passed, I just ain't gonna tell you no way. I have grandkids, you know, who like to think of Pawpaw a certain way. But yeah, I was involved in that part of it. And like I said, I went to jail 3 times. Once was during the mass arrest, and that's only because, and then there was only a mass arrest because the people, and we should have known better. We should have put our people at the back of the march, because the people who are at the back are the ones who don't want to be in the middle, which means they ain't the ones who want to fight. And because they wouldn't fight and bust through the police line as they started to try to encircle us, they were able to do it. Because if certain people had been at the back, let me tell you, when they had the mass arrest, when they cleared finally got all the strikers on the buses on their way to jail, they found knives and guns and pool balls. Pool, really creative. I used to come to strike every day with a pocket full of my field jacket, my Army field jacket. I would come with a pocket full of marbles. Because when they would chase us on horseback, the horses couldn't run on the marbles. So you throw marbles behind you and they couldn't catch you. These people at the strike were brilliant. They found knitting needles, but no yarn. They found scissors and no paper. Everything was in that. Every day, we came out to protest. And we believed in fighting back. We were not passive and pacifists. I used to say, y'all pacifists and nonviolent folk need to stay away before you get somebody hurt. Because, this, I'm not against you, but this is not the time for that. This is not what we're doing. We love Dr. King. That ain't what we're doing here. Because we thought it was important that there be some physical resistance to oppression. Because that's what we were fighting. And the oppression that we were fighting wasn't the police. The police were the defenders of the oppressor. The oppression was what they were spewing out in class every day, trying to get you to believe the bull. I would have said this different before I was Reverend Townsend, but trying to get you to believe the bull that they was feeding these kids in class every day about this system, which most of you all are way too wise to buy now, but the only reason you are too wise to buy it is because folks sacrifice out here so some alternatives could be taught to you. There are alternatives that you were taught that I wasn't taught. So the first trouble I got in, I was in high school, Dorsey High, in Los Angeles, California. And I asked my instructor in class in U.S. history, if John Brown was insane because he wanted to use violence to free the slave, why wasn't George Washington and them insane for using violence in Revolutionary War? Now, my teacher said, Arnold, you're such a jerk. And she sent me to the principal's office for that question. Now, my teacher was right. I was a jerk. I was always cutting up in class. But I wasn't a jerk right then. I thought the teacher had an answer of what the difference was. I really did. I wasn't being a smart aleck. If I asked you that now, I'd be smart aleck. I didn't know she didn't have an answer. Sent me to the principal's office. Now, my parents were old school. The teacher was always right. So I took a note home that they gave me, sealed, so I didn't read it. And I gave it to my mom and daddy at the dinner table. She read it, passed it to him, he read it. And I didn't get in trouble. So now I'm really scared. Because they're really going, this is really serious now. I'm really in trouble. They might make me leave, move. And nothing was said. It wasn't discussed. I get up the next morning. When I got up, my parents were always already gone. I would hear them getting ready. They left while it was still dark. My mom is still home. And I get ready, I get dressed, I get ready to leave to catch the bus. She said, no, I'm taking you. I figured she gonna drop me off. Maybe she got a doctor's appointment. We get to school, we still ain't discussed this note. I'm so confused. She said, no, I'm getting ready to get out. Like, they dropped me off before. No, I'm going. I'm going with you. We walk in the principal's office. We sit down. And my mom goes off because my question wasn't answered. And she and the boys' vice principal, they get into it. Next thing I know, here come the principal. This thing is really serious. That my question was not answered to her satisfaction on why was this man insane for wanting violence, but they weren't. You should have. And so when they get through with all this right in front of me, and I'm feeling pretty cool by now. So finally me and my mom get up to leave, and we're walking out the door, and my mom stops, turns around, points to a boy's vice principal, and says, Mr. Miller, my son is still waiting for an answer. So now I'm ready to go to class, right? Mom said, no, come on, you hanging out with me. I didn't go to school that day. Me and my mom hung out all day. We went downtown LA, did a little shopping. We ate at the original pantry, one of my favorite places. It's a steak and chop house that you got to stand in line to get in, and you might see anybody in that line in them days, from Marlon Brando to Elgin Baylor or Will Chamberlain. It didn't matter who you were, you stood in line. And you ate steaks and chops, and we ate ice cream, and I spent the rest of my high school career trying to think up questions that could get me another day to hang out with my mom all day long. Because they worked. That was the only time I ever got to do that in my life. But so that was the kind of questions that you weren't allowed to ask. And you guys, you young people, ask them all the time now because of San Francisco State. Because the people that I met on those picking lines that were students here. And I can name them from Roger Alvarado to Jerry Bernardo to Bernard Stringer to Sharon Truska, Carlotta Simon. I can name them, folks. Some of the most brilliant people I have ever known in my entire life. I believe that when people of certain kind of intelligence find themselves in the same place together at the same time, major things happen. San Francisco State Strike, yes. But all of the real progressive activity of San Francisco, which is only a shadow of its former self when it comes to real progressivism, is living on past glory. But the real progressivism that happened in this city grew out of this strike. The KPOO radio, one of the most important institutions having the city, came out of San Francisco State. The people that created the Art Center on Mission out of San Francisco State Strike. African American Art and Culture Complex. WAPAC, which fought the redevelopment agency tooth and nail. You want to find out more about it, I'll send it to you. Redevelopment, a Marxist analysis, which was made by people in San Francisco Newsreel, the Fillmore, the Mission, South of Market, talked about urban renewal in Fillmore and South of Market, talked about when they were going to try to bring BART into the Mission, which would have done the same thing, and it would have moved people out of the Mission like they're being moved out now. That would have happened 40 years ago if they hadn't resisted. All that grew out of the strike at San Francisco State. Harvey Milk wouldn't have been elected had it not been for State College. Who, by the way, you know, a lot of people talk about Harvey Milk. We were actually friends. Tell you a Harvey Milk story. I'm doing something one day, my phone rang. Arnold, it's Harvey. Yeah, man, what's happening? I said, look, I need to talk to you. Go in his office. Said, what's up, man? I said, look, Arnold, I want to pass an initiative. I want to introduce legislation for San Francisco to divest itself of any business with companies that's doing business in South Africa. What you asking me for? That's a no-brainer. Well, you know, Willie B. Kennedy and Doris Ward's on the board. They really should be in. I mean, I'm a gay white boy from San Francisco. Now, y'all excuse the preacher's language, but I'm quoting myself now. Harvey, do you think of this initiative? I just get a little emotional remembering it. I said, do you think if this initiative saved one baby's life in South Africa, that the people in South Africa give a fuck whether you're a gay white boy in San Francisco? Introduce the shit, man. Ask Willie B. and Doris to co-sponsor with you, but don't you take your name off of it. That wouldn't have happened without State College. I don't know that Harvey would have even had the boldness to run, and he had the nerve to run, but to believe he would get support without State College. Because everybody did state. We didn't make no difference. Whether you was a woman, women fought for their position. They jacked us up in class when we came up with some misogynist bulls, you know. But it was accepted. Because we couldn't have did it without them. And don't let anybody, I know men, we get the attention and all that. Don't you let nobody tell you that this strike would have went anywhere. But not only the support of the women, without the mental processes. Because they were in it 100% all the way. And so, that none of that would have happened without the without the support of everyone. And I'm going to tell y'all, if you don't do nothing else while you're out here, you fight to make that community connection. That you've got to have a certain amount of hours working in the community to get a degree in ethnic studies. If we are not different than the other departments, then what is our value? Why did all them people fight, go to jail, die, do time to create this? See, this department was created like no other department on campus. So why shouldn't it be different? And why shouldn't it require difference? How you going to just fall in step with the rest of these so-and-sos on campus? How y'all going to fall in step with them? And don't ask no more of your students than they do. Because that's not how you came into existence. It took more. It took different to create you. Now y'all want to just go along and roll with them. I'm sorry, I don't mean no harm, and I love everybody, but I just can't accept it. I can't accept it. Y'all going along with everybody else. I can't accept it.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the BSU and the role BSU played in the strike? You've kind of been talking about it. I just wanted to know if you could just talk a little more about it.
Yeah. What? Can I tell you that? The BSU was a strike. Because not for BSU, ain't no strike. If not for the BSU, ain't no third world liberation front. Ain't no ethnic studies. Ain't no La Raza study. Ain't no women's study. Ain't no Asian study. Ain't none of that without the BSU. With not only BSU, but with the courage. You know, I'm on campus, and I'm just getting on campus. And I'm in the BSU office with some ugly little bungalows, which should have probably preserved them for historical reference, really. Right outside the cafeteria. And I go in there, one day, and there's Charles Gary sitting at a desk on the phone. Charles Gary was the Panther lawyer. I haven't seen him on the television. I go in there, and one day, and Bobby Seale is on the phone in the BSU. And Bobby Seale is talking to a couple of guys. They done come here and they didn't got a case. Bobby Seale said, well, yeah, I got a lawyer for you. And I can give you his number. Now, he's a white boy. If you too black for that, fuck you, I can't help you. You know, but this, you know, and this is this activity. So I come in there, and I'm working with the BSU. I'm joining the BSU, and summer is coming. And I don't know if it was Benny, one of the brothers in the BSU, tells me, look here, what you doing this summer? You got a job? I said, no. Look, okay, I got a summer job for you. You're going to teach summer school. You're going to teach black history at the community center in South Park. Y'all didn't know South Park was a black community, did you? So, South Park. I knew people down there. I taught summer school there. I got to know everybody in South Park. And I never forget, we were down there one night. And the late Joe Rudolph, who was a striker and became the general manager of KPOO. Joe said, y'all know something, fellas? These white folk gonna come down here to South Park, and they're gonna put in quaint little restaurants, and this little circled area. They're gonna make it a nice little park. Might even get some gas lights at the entrance, and all these black folk is gone. You can't find nobody black down there now. That was, so I taught South Park, and I taught summer school in Fillmore. And I ain't been able to get out of Fillmore ever since. 50-some years ago, I taught a summer school class in the Fillmore, and I've been stuck in there ever since. I had been accepted to Santa Clara Law School, and they became the director of WAPAC, and I ain't never got back to it. Never got back to it. I got accepted. I was on strike. I was on trial, and I defended myself. Judge Janet Aiken's court. And I was defending myself. And my prosecutor, John Dwyer, who became a friend, he was so impressed with the way I defended myself. He wrote me a recommendation to this big wheel at Santa Clara alumni, Santa Clara Law School, who then recommended me, and I got a letter of acceptance. Now, when white folk tell you about what they can and can't do, I got a letter of acceptance before I ever filled out an application to Santa Clara Law School. But I never got there because of the BSU. So I got, so I ended up in Fillmore and getting a job. Well, I needed a job because I'm coming out of strike. Nobody else would hire her. And I'm still in Fillmore. I'm still working there. We started a nonprofit housing development corporation because there were no black-led ones in the city. And so Without Walls Community Development Corporation, which Without Walls is the name of our church, our ministry, because we've always felt that people put up too many walls when they ought to be building more bridges between each other. We got too many walls between walls of gender, color, ethnicity, whatever. We can always find a reason.
So Reverend Townsend, did you go on to theology school after San Francisco State?
I haven't finished theology school, but I did go after San Francisco.
Were you able to
State.
finish San Francisco State? And
I didn't graduate. I just left.
okay.
I left high school. I didn't graduate. I think I'm not a
Was it after the strikes that you left?
Yeah.
Okay.
I stayed here about another year after the strike.
Okay.
And then I came back and worked in a black program that was on campus with Dr. Wade Nobles and a couple of other people. But then I left that. I was doing some community work for them, but then I left it. I was a decent scholar, a poor academic. I have had trouble with authority figures all my life. And even after I became one, I still have trouble with it. So
And then you became a minister.
then I went into the ministry.
Yeah.
And it was just something it had been coming all my life, but I had been trying to avoid it. My grandmother told me when I was 8 years old I was going to be a preacher.
Wow.
And I was raised by my stepdad, who's a wonderful man and a great dad. And he adopted me, and he's Townsend. I had met my biological dad once when I was 5, and then when I was 16, he visited me at my high school because he was in LA. And I got to know him when I was 56, and he was a retired Baptist pastor. And interestingly enough, my daughter, Rachel, who in 2018 passed away January 5th, unexpectedly. It's like a vein burst in the neck, like an aneurysm. The next day I was going to meet with some people who wanted to name a building. They had a senior building they rehabbed in Fillmore. They wanted to name it after my recently deceased daughter. And because she used to do the Juneteenth parade and a lot of other things in San Francisco. I opened it, and it was a young lady introducing herself to me that she had been born in Los Angeles in January of '62. I got out of high school in January of '61. I mean, in June of '61. And long story short, it turned out my high school girlfriend, when we graduated, was pregnant and had a baby, and I never knew she had a baby. And put the baby up for adoption at 1 month old. And she was adopted by an older couple. Didn't know she was adopted. A well-to-do couple. In fact, her godfather was the late Tom Bradley, former mayor of LA. And she found out she was adopted after her parents died. And she started looking for her biological family, and she went on Ancestry, and I had done that years prior to learn my African roots and so on. And long story short, it turned out that she's my daughter. So after my daughter passed, I ended up with a daughter I knew nothing about. If you Google me, the Chronicle did a 2-page Sunday spread on me and my 2 daughters. And she is an accomplished jazz singer, lives in New York, a resident vocalist at Birdland, the oldest jazz club in the country, and just got back from England, by the way, Monday before last, last Monday, from doing a gig in London. And she'll be singing at my 80th birthday party, which I'm now planning. We're going to do a big thing, and we're having a ball getting to know each other. Her name is Natalie Douglas. And she's married, no children, but I have a son who I adopted, Corey, who is 35, and he has 2 daughters. I have dos nietas, because my 2 daughters are Salvadoreñas. Their mother is Salvadorian, and they're 8 and 4, and I'm having a ball.
Wow, Reverend Townsend, what a life story.
The greatest, let me tell you something, greatest thing in the world is your grandkids, because you can be as irresponsible. He says, my son says, but Pop, why you buy them so much shit, man? I said, son, I ain't gonna never tell them no. What do you mean? I said, I'm not raising them, you are. You tell them no. You know, they've been with me all day. They got a big bag of candy. You know they done ate too much candy. You're a good dad. You take the candy. Now they hate you and love me. That's how I go, man. Well, that ain't fair. Grandparents don't play fair. We play to win, man. We play to win. And so, but he's a great guy.
Reverend Townsend, just a couple of questions, and I'm just going to wrap up. And
ask anything you want, because as y'all know, I can go on, so
awesome.
You got to interrupt.
How many days did you spend in jail total during the strike?
Oh, I didn't spend very long. I'll tell you why. Well, because the strikers would get you out. One time I spent about 3 or 4 days. But here's the deal. When I went on trial for the mass arrest, I got a great story for you. Before I tell you about the mass arrest, I was arrested once because a cop that had arrested me the first time, I forget what it was even for. We were doing something. He sees me come out of this building. Right after I come out of the building, some cherry bombs or something blows up a toilet. Well, he saw me in the building, and he just assumed that I did it. So they arrested me and charged me with setting off explosives. So I go to court one day, and my judge is Judge Harry Lowe, Chinese judge. So he says, so I stand, they call my name, I stand up, I walk up, he says, now what did you do? And he looks, explosives. What are you doing in municipal court? Why is he in Superior Court? Well, Your Honor, it was fireworks. He said, are the arresting officers in court? He said, yeah. Come up here. Judge Harry Lowe said, fireworks, do you realize that this is a court of law? We got serious matters we're pursuing, and you got somebody in my courtroom for fireworks. If you ever bring anything like this again, I'm going to put you in jail for contempt of court. Case dismissed. Get out of here. So years later, I'm working on as a consultant on something with a lawyer friend of mine. He's a land use attorney, and we're working on a project. So he brings me to lunch. He said, I want you to meet this judge, good former retired judge, who's going to help us on this. So I go, and it's Harry Lowe. So I said, I actually have met you before. I was before you. He said, for what? So I told him what happened. He said, can you imagine they bring a case of setting off fireworks before a Chinese judge? Can you be more stupid than that? He said, fireworks are like a religion in our community. I ain't never been so pissed off in my life. And so we had a great laugh about that, Harry Lowe and I together. A great laugh. But I was convicted of one charge and acquitted of two others. But the one I was convicted on, I was supposed to go do 6 months. Well, some of the people who were on trial with me, they went and did their time. You know, I ain't, you black, you ain't doing time to the last minute when there's no other option. Our case was overturned. So I never had to go to jail. And the people who did time basically did it for nothing. Because they did, they did about four and a half months.
Yeah.
When you get time off for good behavior.
Right.
My son was arrested. He gets a scholarship to play football at Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. There's an old song they sing about the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. That's the Atchison. Kansas ain't like other places. Now I told him before he left, son, when you get back there, Kansas ain't like California. Weed is drugs. If you get caught, you ain't gonna get a ticket. They're gonna put your ass in jail. He gets caught about 2.5 ounces. My son ended up getting a year in prison.
Wow.
For 2.5 ounces. You ever heard of Leavenworth?
Yeah.
Fort Leavenworth prison? Well, what people don't understand, it's a federal prison on one side of the street, but there's a state Leavenworth on the other side. He goes to Leavenworth for about 90 days, then he goes to a camp. He calls me up and says, I'm not getting out early, because I told him you'll end up doing about 9 months, because you'll get credit for, good behavior and for working. Every day you work, you get time off. You say, I'm not working. I said, what you mean, man? You don't want to get them white people next time. He said, Townsend. That's what his mama called him. That's what he called him. Or Pops. He said, 37 cents an hour. That's about what they pay you for work. I said, I know, son, but you don't want to be there. No. He said, all I know is somebody told me once, don't never work a job for less than an honest day's wage. Because if you take less than an honest day's wage, you're a slave. And boy, don't you never be a slave to nobody. You know who taught him that, right? So he throws it back in my face. I said, I turned from, fear to being proud. That you're willing to do time for your conviction. I'm with you, do it. I got you. I got your back. And so he got out, and he's doing great now. He's a great guy, as you can see, full of integrity. He's adopted. His dad was never in his life. And I'll never forget, his oldest girl is 8. When she was born, we were at the house one night. And, they were passing the baby around, everybody was looking, and he and I are sitting there looking, smoking cigars probably. And I overheard him mumble to himself, she will never have to wonder where I am. He and the mama ain't together no more, but he sees his girls every day. And the only time he don't see them is when they go to El Salvador with their with the other grandparents, with the abuelos. But other than that, he is with them every day. So, and I overheard this once. They were at a party that his godparents threw. So most of the people there were older people, few people his age, but they all been knowing him all his life. And his mother overheard them telling him what a great young father he is. And he said, everything I know about being a father, I learned from Reverend Townsend. I said, okay, don't tell me nothing else because you're going to make me cry. I get emotional very easy. But that's who he is now.
That's great. Thank you, Reverend Townsend. Professor, thank you, I think, because you had so much to say, but we want to give you a break.